Cars talks, facts are opinions, and opinions are facts. Car sales. Oh, car sales. Probably one of the most hated forms of sales in all of the sales industry, and for good reason. And this video is going to be all about the crafty, scammy, crappy, goofy, dumb things car dealerships do. And that's coming from a dude who did car sales, who may still do car sales in the future, and who still does sales in a different capacity, in a different industry. And I want to talk about it. All right, so car sales is, how should I put this? Probably one of the most hated forms of sales to ever exist. And it's notoriously bad. And it's because they continue to do this. Now, not every dealership, or dealership group, I should say, is bad. And in fact, I will tell you about my personal buying experiences at many different dealerships, different dealership groups. And honestly, out of all the cars I've bought, there's only one experience that really left me a bit upset at the end. A little bit of that salty, bad taste in your mouth when you leave, like something just wasn't right. Your rectum feels a little sore. Yeah, one of those. That was even before I got into sales myself. So this was really early on, and that was probably the worst. But let me get into those real quick. So let's add a foundation to the rest of this video. Jumping right into it, the first time I had a super negative experience at a dealership in buying a car was when me and the missus went and bought her current car, which is a 2009 Ford Focus. It was used at a Honda dealership. It was a good price. It had low miles. It checked all our boxes. It had a little bit of damage, which is why the price was lower, and we knew that. I wanted to go look at it to make sure mechanically it was fine. There was a couple problems, but nothing crazy. Ultimately, we ended up wanting to buy the car. So, of course, after the test drive, after speaking with the salesperson, we were comfortable moving forward with the transaction. Now, the salesperson, the sales guy, he wasn't really a problem. He was your typical, just very stale, he was not the offender in the situation, I should say. He did everything professionally. He gets all the information, submits the paperwork, gets approved for financing, and then all hell broke loose, because it wasn't until we get to financing did we have a problem. Well, this is where it all went downhill. The F&I manager, who happened to be taking care of the deal that day, was probably one of the most pretentious, arrogant, hot-headed. I mean, I have a lot of choice words for this fella, but I can't say that, okay? I just can't. But this is exactly the experience people associate with dealerships. This guy did exactly what people don't want to experience. And man, it was bad. So I should backtrack a little bit and say that the salesperson did try, he asked some preliminary questions. Are you interested in extended warranties? Are you, looking to do this? Would you like to have this package thrown on, wheel and tire? And we're like, no, 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 and no. And so then in the finance department, they try to rehash that. And this finance manager was, man, he was relentless. Went over the whole spiel again, had to tell a whole life story in order to try to get us to buy an extended warranty, which I'm glad we never did, because we would have never have used it. The car went way past the coverage that warranty would have covered in terms of mileage. And, the things that have gone wrong with the car, it wouldn't even have covered anyway. So I'm so glad we said no. I knew it wasn't really necessary on that particular car. I looked it over. It seemed fine. Those cars are not known to really have any major mechanical problems. And it was low mileage. So I didn't have any concerns. I did not want that warranty. The only thing we took out of all those packages they offered was the gap insurance. And that I do recommend. I don't care who you are. If you are financing more than 50% of your vehicle's value, you should always get the gap. It's usually never that much money, and it will save you a lot of money, worst case scenario. My experience in buying cars and my experience in sales will tell you always get the gap if you're financing more than 50, sometimes even up to 75%, depending on the vehicle. You know, if the vehicle depreciates really fast, you might want to get gap if you're even doing 75%, which most people are anyway. So generally, if you're financing, get gap. Moving on. So, you know, it was back and forth with this finance manager. And I'm like, you know, I'm getting a little upset. My anxiety was up. I was tired. I didn't sleep that night. So I'm sitting there trying to understand all the numbers. He's spitting out all the numbers. And I'm trying to do the math in my head. I got my phone out, you know, on the calculator doing the math. And, you know, he's just sitting there like, well, what was, you know, the holdup? You know, why do you got to think about it? And I'm like, because I need to make sure we're not getting screwed, you know, like that's why I got to think about it. And I'm sitting here running the numbers. I'm like, no. And I'm looking at her because ultimately she was the one buying the car, but I was advising her, right? So I'm looking at, I'm like, no, we shouldn't get this. That doesn't make sense. No. And I'm doing this right in front of the finance manager. I didn't care. I'm just doing the math. And I said, look, the gap sounds like we should do. We should do the gap. That makes sense. But we're not doing the extended warranty. I'll fix the car if it breaks. We're not doing the wheel and tire. That's stupid. And I'm saying this, and the finance manager is just getting upset. I could see his demeanor changing, the tone, his body language, all of it was changing because he was trying to upsell because he thought we were young, dumb kids coming in, buying a car, and he thought he could, you know, get us to buy all these things, and we did not. I made a mistake because I misunderstood what he had said, and he said something with the numbers. And I said, okay, well, if it was that, then it should be lower. And I misunderstood it. It was my fault. Like I said, I was exhausted. And he said, you know, he kind of got like snippy at me. And he was like, maybe you need to go take a nap. And I'm like sitting there like, what? If it wasn't for buying this car, I would have walked right out. I would have just said, all right, come on, let's go. But the car, we knew we wanted the car. She really kind of needed the car because she had just gotten in an accident and she had nothing to drive. So I'm like, man, you were lucky we need a car today. Just the way he said that to me. And he just like, you know, he's like, why don't you sit down? Let me handle this. I'm like, no way. And I bit my tongue. I had my fist clenched. Like had my fist clenched. Like it was just underneath the desk. I'm like, Kirk, you're not going to leave today in handcuffs. You're going to leave with a car. Please just keep it together. And yeah, he did this through the whole transaction. And after just relentlessly asking and asking again, finally gave up, wrote up the deal with just the gap at, you know, the whatever rate it was. I forget. It was her first loan, so it wasn't even a good rate. It's like 12% or no, 8%. Actually, it was a good rate at the time for a first time loan. That still to this day rubs me like, I think my blood pressure has gone up a little bit just telling you this story because it was bad and it was the worst. And thankfully, I never had that bad of an experience ever again. Just recently I purchased a car. Well, actually it's almost been a year now, back in October at a dealership that I currently live near here in Florida. And this dealership, once again, it was like a used car outlet type dealership owned by a bigger dealership group. And they had a car that I was interested in. And, you know, the pricing was right. And long story short, the process was great. They negotiated with me. I think they gave me a fair trade for the Mustang that I traded in to them. They negotiated the price on the purchase price of the vehicle. You know, so it wasn't a big deal. And once again, when I went into financing, do you want gap? Yes. Do you want extended warranty? No. Okay. Just click this box here and initials that you're declining. And that was it. Simple. They ask you once, done, moving on. easy, no high pressure, not trying to tell me a life story to sell me a warranty I don't want nor need. And that makes a difference. Once again, this dealership actually went and applied for a job there. If I get back into car sales, I wouldn't mind working there because I like the way they do their business. They're not pushy. And they do the right things. And I think they have good product, good cars at good prices. And that's always a good thing because they're competitive. Which leads me into another part of the story. But before I get into that, one more thing. I was actually applying for a job at another dealership in the same area where I live. And I pulled up to the front of the dealership, right? I'm getting all my stuff ready and I'm walking in because I had already submitted an application. I'm walking in just to follow up with my application. Like, hey, I put in an application, just seeing if you guys were still, hiring, right? I'm, getting all my stuff together, getting my phone, turning the car off. I turned my head to go open the door. I kid you not, the salesman was standing at my door. I cracked the door open. I looked up. I said, "Hi." And he's like, "Hey there. How can I help you? What brings you in today?" I'm like, Jesus, no. If I was a customer, I would have said, there ain't nothing you can help me with. I would have shut my door, turned the car back on, and I would have been out of there. Don't ever come up to my door before I even get out and try to help me. Sometimes it's annoying enough when you get out of your car and you got the salespeople standing there up at the front to, grab you before you can even walk through the front door. Sometimes they'll be standing at the door. And, I get why they do that. And it's really just to be a certain, to direct people, because not everyone who comes into a dealership is going for sales. They might need to go to service or whatever. So, but the salespeople don't know that. And so they stand up there and just trying to direct people, but people think they're always there to bother you. And that's not the case. They're there to potentially get walk in business, but sometimes people aren't there for them. They're there for maybe someone else or for some other thing. So, but this freaking sales guy was at my car before I could even get out. And if I don't care how good that car is, unless it was the perfect car at the perfect price at the perfect time, and I rolled up to that dealership and someone did that, I tell you what, I would ask for anyone but that sales guy. If I can't get out of my car before you're already in my face, you're not getting my business. It ain't happening. And more or less, if I can't even get into the building before you start pestering me, that's already a problem. And a lot of people don't like that. For me, when I was doing car sales, I actually got yelled at by my sales manager because I wasn't as attentive. I didn't really do that because I know people don't like, I didn't like that. If I saw someone on the lot, if I was walking around the lot doing whatever I was doing at the time and I happened to see a new, people on the lot, would I approach them? Absolutely. But this is what I would do. I'd say, "Hey, folks, how y'all doing today?" And you're like, "Hey, we're doing great. Oh, we're just looking." Fine. "Hey, is there anything I can help you find? Are you looking for anything in particular? Any one of our cars that can help you find, point you in the right direction?" And they're like, "Nah, we're just kind of browsing." Or sometimes they would be like, "Oh, yeah, we're looking for Nissan Altima," right? I said, "Oh, okay. All our Altimas are going to be right over there." And I'll point over in that direction. And I was like, "They're all going to be over there. And go ahead, take a look. I'm going to run inside real quick. I'll be back out to check on you." And I would do that. I literally would go inside because I would do two things. That gives them time, right? I also go in to inform my sales manager, "Hey, there's some people on the line. I've greeted them. Don't worry about it. I'm going back out to get them." And generally, if it was hot out, I'd bring some waters with me just to be courteous, right? And just try not to be annoying. I don't want to be annoying. I want to be helpful. If they're there to buy a car, I want to help them buy a car. I don't want to be annoying. I don't want to push them into a car. I don't want to sell them a car. I want to assist them in purchasing a vehicle. And that's what I would did. I'd go back out to them. I was like, "Hey, you got any questions?" They're like, oh no, hey, it's hot out here. You guys want a bottle of water? Yeah, sure. Hey, we'll take a bottle of water. And it's just a good icebreaker, builds that just initial rapport without being pushy. I gave them that initial space. It makes a difference. And 9 times out of 10, they bought. Why? Because they felt like they could trust me. They didn't feel like I was intruding on them at the first point of contact. And I took that. I saw that. It happened repeatedly. And I did that. I kept doing that. And then the sales managers were like, you got to get out there and you got to stay with them. You can't let them go. You got to, I'm telling you, that always doesn't work. This works. They didn't want to hear it. So it was always an uphill battle with sales, the management. They were pushing me to push other people. And I saw there was a better way and they didn't want to believe it. They didn't want to see it. But that's why I really got out of car sales, because I was just tired of trying to be told what to do, knowing I have a way that works and still it's not good enough. Pretty much that's just how car sales is. Any sales, but car sales, it's never good enough. You hit a record, you better push past that record. It's always just trying to push yourself. And it's almost a cultish mentality that they try to teach you. And some people get caught up in that and they learn very bad sales techniques, very bad habits when it comes to working with people. And it's why car sales is the way it is. And it's why so many people have such a negative experience, and why you can't really ever go, you go into any car dealership not knowing what to expect. A lot of times you never know until the process is done, whether you've entered a good dealership or a bad one. And just in general, it's such a ridiculous industry, right? Because for me, I am looking for a car sales job part-time. It hardly exists. And it makes me wonder why, because if it's commission only, right? They're just paying you commission and they're not paying you to be there by hourly. Not all. Some dealerships do, but not most of them is 100% commission. Then why do they care how much I'm there? If I'm producing what I need to produce part-time, if I'm still making them money, why do they care? Why do I have to be there 70 hours a week? Why do you have to have me work such long hours when I can be just as effective on a even just 40-hour work week schedule? And I've seen this. This is why I've turned down so many sales jobs, because I'm simply not putting in all that time. They don't have like an A team, B team. Some dealerships do. They'll alternate where, you're not working ridiculously long hours, but it's always, you're working the weekends. You have no life. Basically, you want a life? Don't do car sales. You want money and you have no life and you have no family, you have no other obligations, and you can just work yourself until the grave. By all means, go into car sales. And that's kind of like what they have done and how they have cemented themselves in the professional work space. Excuse me, coffee break. And another part of this is when people walk into a dealership, they don't realize that the whole damn dealership, not just the salespeople, is trying to make money off them. They don't really think about every department is kind of trained in sales. Just because you're not a sales associate doesn't mean you're not trained in sales. Go to a parts department. Most of them guys are trained in sales. Your service advisors, you're taking your vehicles in for servicing, all trained in sales, and they're all trained to push sales. They're all trained to push services and repairs that you may and may not need. A lot of times they're pushing unneeded services, although there are instances where they are recommending very much needed service or maintenance to someone's vehicle, and they decline anyway. But in a lot of cases, they are just trying to make money off some BS service that your vehicle does not need or does not need in that moment in time. Dealerships make most of their money, believe it or not, through their service department. They hardly ever really make as much money on the sales side of things. And that's pretty much why, because they upsell service, they upsell parts and everything. And it really truly is dependent on the dealership. Some dealerships offer a different model in how they make their money. There's just so many ways dealerships make money that most people don't even understand. When you purchase a car, and I'll just run through this real quick. When you purchase a car, right? Let's say you are purchasing a pre-owned vehicle. They love that. Why? Because pre-owned vehicles usually have larger margins. A lot of times pre-owned vehicles are trade-ins. A lot of times they come from auctions. They usually have a pretty good margin in there, so they can make a lot of money on that pre-owned vehicle, right? Versus if they sold something new. So they got thousands of dollars in margin in that vehicle. The sale of the vehicle's done. Now we're going into finance. Finance, this is where a lot of the money comes in. So you'll hear this. People come in, oh, I got my own financing. I already got approved from my bank. I already know my rate. And then you'll hear the finance manager or even the sales sometime will say this, it's like, well, would you be open to financing with us if we can beat your rate? And they're like, oh, I highly doubt you can beat my rate. And, basically it's just a matter of convincing them that we can. My experience when I was selling cars, there was only one time we couldn't beat someone's rate because they got it through a credit union and it was at the lowest federal rate possible at the time. We couldn't match it. But practically everyone else who came in with their own financing, like through Capital One or whatever, we could easily beat the rate with our in-house financing options. So it was a win for the dealership and the customer because they got a cheaper rate, which means they're borrowing the money for less. They're paying less for the car over time, and the dealership makes money because the dealership has what's called a buy rate. When you finance a car through a dealership, they have a network of lenders that they partner up with, and the lenders give them what's called a buy rate. Now, the buy rate is the base rate that the lender is giving for the loan. And then they'll say, okay, well, we'll give you an extra, 4 or 5 points on that, right? So there's the buy rate and then there's the rate that the dealership ends up telling you. And there's a difference. There is that margin. Those few extra points in the middle is basically money for the dealership. That is negotiable. Most people don't know that. You can negotiate that. And generally, when you go into financing and you hear them say, oh, we got to, move some numbers around, or we have to, do a couple things to make the deal work because maybe you're a little upside down or your credit's not as good. Most likely, all they're doing is taking that buy rate. They're taking some of that margin away from them so the lender will accept the deal. And that's pretty much all it is, right? So they're making money there too. Then they're making money on any additional product they sell. They sell you a warranty, they're making money. They sell you wheel and tire package, they're making money. Sell you paint protection, they're making money. Sell you detailing for life, they're making money. Any of those accessories, they are making money because they are upcharging them beyond what they're really worth. They're going to want you to be loyal, right? If your car, bringing it in us every, especially if you purchase a maintenance plan, because they'll try to sell that to you as well. Oil changes for life come in, and then that's when they try to get you in servicing. So you bring a car in for your scheduled oil changes that you've already paid for, and then the service advisor, oh, we see that your tires need to be changed. We can change that. Your brakes are a little worn down. We recommend you change out your fluids, your transmission fluid, do a coolant flush, and then bombard you with $700-800 worth of work every time you have to come in for servicing. And, they want you to say yes when a lot of times you don't have to have any of that done, and then they'll make money there. So they make money off of you every step of the way. And that's why you have to be a savvy buyer. You have to be an informed buyer. And honestly, when I was selling cars, I loved an informed buyer. I'm an informed buyer. I know what I want. I know, like, if I'm going into a dealership, I know the vehicle I'm going in there for. I know what I can borrow. So I know my buying power. I know what I want to spend. I know what I'm going to take. And it's easy. I love dealing with customers like that. Why? Because they made the transaction easy. In most cases, the only thing I had to do for those type of customers was they also had their own financing. I had to, kind of convince them to do our in-house financing. It's the only time I really kind of had to push them. Like I said, in most cases, they got a better rate anyway, so they were even happier. And my, sales manager was happy too. So we were all happy. But I loved informed buyers because they made the process easy. Hey, I'm coming in. I'm looking at your Chevy Silverado you have. Yeah, all right, let me pull that up for you. Let's go take a look at it. All right, take a look, test drive. Hey, I love this vehicle. Let's go ahead and talk numbers. Let's go do it. All right. It was that simple. That's all it has to be. And it was sometimes those people who knew what they want, I could have them in and out within an hour. I think one time it was just over an hour from start to finish, to have them done, have a whole transaction, car sold. It was pretty cool. It doesn't have to be hard. It can be really easy. Humble salespeople will agree. They love informed buyers too because they make the process easy. Egotistic, annoying salespeople, especially management, don't like informed buyers because they know they can't make all the money they want to make. They can't extract all the money they want out of them. And that's where people get taken advantage of. People who have no clue what they're doing when they walk into a dealership, they will get the worst rate because they're not going to ask about the buy rate. The dealership's going to say, oh yeah, we'll get you financing. You got like 15%, but really the buy rate's probably 12. So the dealership's keeping like 3 freaking whole percent on that dang deal. They sold you on wheel and tire. They sold you on the maintenance. They sold you on extended warranty. All on a car that's worth, and they love that. They will love to make all that money on you. And they do. It happens every day because people just don't know better. They're always going to want to take advantage of you. And even the good ones, because they're not going to say no to easy money. They're just not going to make it difficult, right? Like a good dealership, good management, good salespeople. Once you say no, it's over with. It's done. They're not going to push you. They're still going to ask. Really, what they're hoping for is a layover. That's what we call them, as a layover. A customer who just walks in and says yes, 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 yes to everything. I don't necessarily like layovers. I like informed buyers, but I don't like layovers. And layovers usually end up being a problem after the sale because then they realize that they kind of got screwed. But in some cases, they did it to themselves because if someone comes into me and buys a car from me, right? We have the ability to negotiate, but they don't negotiate. Why are you going to get mad at me? Because you didn't ask the question. Am I supposed to give you a discount because you just came in? No. And it's not a fault on the dealership on that end. It's a fault on the buyer. Now, sometimes the dealership will give discounts just to make the sale happen if they need to get closer to the equilibrium. Because let's be real, right? When someone comes in and buys a car, they are trying to get the best price possible. They're trying to walk out with spending the least amount of money possible. While on the dealership side, they're trying to get the most money possible. And in a perfect situation, you meet somewhere in the middle. And that's what we want. And you want to do that with little friction as possible. That doesn't always happen. A lot of times people come in and they lay over and then, dealership's happy, they make money. Later on, their friends and family are like, well, no, you paid a lot of money. And then it looks bad that way on the dealership. Like, oh yeah, my husband bought a car from them and they completely screwed her over. She overpaid for it. You probably seen reviews, have heard the stories, right? And then on the other side, you got unrealistic customers who come in and they try to negotiate way too low. And there's literally nothing in it for the dealership. Like, they're a business. They're trying to make money. So if you leave them no incentive to do business with you, they're simply not. And you have to understand that as a buyer, it's a business. The ideal situation is both parties recognize that there's some middle ground that needs to take place. And that's in a perfect scenario, which never really happens. It's always the friction that happens in between that, right? That it's what creates so many problems with car sales. And it doesn't have to be. It could be so easy and so simple. But these lunatics in car sales don't want to hear it. They're just unbelievable. The whole industry, like I said, it's a dang cult. It very much well could be. a cult. You can't convince them otherwise. They literally will gaslight you in believing that if you don't take every opportunity, even if it means being the most annoying piece of crap on the planet, then you are a failure and you're never going to succeed. They will burn that straight into your mind. And it's like military training for sales. You know, you turn into this jarhead of a salesperson. And yeah, you become this annoying, relentless piece of crap salesperson who no one's going to like. And generally, the only people who deal with you are the layovers, the ones who just don't know better anyway. But any informed buyer doesn't want to deal with people like that. Like I said earlier in the video, if I come across a salesperson who I feel is too pushy, who I feel is pretentious, who I feel is just way out of line, I'm no longer going to do business. Simple as that. You know, especially if I don't need that car, I don't need you. I can take my business to any other of the, 150 dealerships within a 20-mile radius. You think you're the only one selling cars? Get out of here, I just think it's crazy how the whole industry is, and it really could be so much better. I almost wondered, like, man, maybe I need to start my own dealership and try to do this the right way. And I'm like, you're thinking way out of the line here, boy. Don't even. But let me know. Have you had really bad experiences with car sales, with buying a car, purchase a car, or have you even worked in car sales or at a dealership and you just noticed some things just weren't right? Let me know. Put your thoughts in the comments. Otherwise, I'm going to wrap it up here for the video. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. Share with everyone you know if you want to see more content like this and you haven't already. Go ahead, subscribe to the channel. Keep a lookout for next Cars Talks video.